When we think of our founding fathers, we often picture great statesmen such as Alexander Hamilton, Benjamin Franklin, and George Washington. These leaders have majestic monuments made of stone and bronze, commemorating their sacrifice and dedication to building this great nation. While I was walking along the National Mall in Washington, D.C. one summer night, I paused to stare at the towering spire of the Washington Monument. And it was in that moment that I realized I had not yet located one significant historical figure and founding father among the many memorials and statues sprinkled across the city. His name is John Marshall, and his legacy today rests in the highest court of the land, the Supreme Court of the United States. As the longest-serving Chief Justice on the Supreme Court bench, John Marshall laid the foundation of our third branch of government, the federal judiciary. When the United States Constitution was ratified as the supreme law of the new American nation, the Founding Fathers included the Supreme Court in Article 3, Section 1, which stated that the judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court, and in such inferior courts as the Congress may from time to time ordain establish. However, the document makes no mention of either the exact powers or explicit purpose of the Supreme Court and the federal judiciary. It took the actions of a special man, Chief Justice John Marshall, to change just that. And in 1803, in the case of Marbury versus Madison, John Marshall struck down an act of Congress as unconstitutional, establishing the vital principle of judicial review. The Supreme Court now had the final word on the constitutionality of the law, shielding the American people from oppressive legislation and executive tyranny. From Marbury versus Madison to United States versus Nixon, the Supreme Court has affirmed time and time again that the president could not sidestep the laws and that Congress could not pass unconstitutional laws. John Marshall strengthened the power of the newly formed federal union and ensured that the Supreme Court would uphold the Constitution that enshrines the liberties and freedoms of the American people well beyond his lifetime. I often picture the powers of the federal government as an intense football game. The two teams clashing in the center of the field represent the two opposing parties in the legislative branch of the House and Senate. The party leaders are represented by the coaches on the sidelines, and the quarterback is represented by the president in the executive office. However, no football game could ever be played without the officiating of one key individual, the unbiased referee. The Supreme Court is the nonpartisan referee of American politics and has the duty of keeping the other two branches in check. Yet, the very process of confirming Supreme Court justices to the bench ensures the stability and independence of the federal judiciary. Members of the Supreme Court are first appointed by the United States President and then confirmed by a majority in the Senate. The Constitution also states that members of the Supreme Court are to serve during terms of good behavior or life terms. Confirmation from the Senate and service for life distinguishes members of the Supreme Court apart from others in the federal government and ensures that their chief concern does not rest in party politics. The Supreme Court's chief concern rests solely in the United States Constitution. Gradual changes in Supreme Court membership also reflect changing attitudes throughout American history. Landmark Supreme Court cases have been at the forefront of national debate over civil liberties for decades. In the 1954 case of Brown versus Board of Education, the Supreme Court ruled that separate schools for African American students were unconstitutional, initiating desegregation and sparking the civil rights movement. And in 1966, the Supreme Court ruled in Miranda versus Arizona and established the Miranda rights to protect the liberties of an arrested suspect. And in 2014, in the landmark case of Obergefell versus Hodges, the Supreme Court guaranteed all same-sex couples the right to marry. The Supreme Court, throughout our nation's history, has navigated through the most contentious cases. And in this process, it maintains the spirit of a living Constitution whose broad provisions are still applied to issues of national importance, touching the lives of every American citizen. An important aspect of the judicial process is that it requires the involvement of the American people. Citizen participation is necessary through jury duty, and personal concerns such as protesting a traffic ticket to filing a lawsuit can be addressed to the courts at the local, state, and federal level, and even on national television by Judge Judy. However, for a case to reach the Supreme Court is far more selective. For example, Judge Judy presides over 650 cases per season, leaving 10% of college graduates thinking that she is indeed a Supreme Court justice. However, the Supreme Court receives on average 10,000 cases or more every year, but only agrees to hear 70 to 85 cases per session. However, if lower state and federal courts are in disagreement, then an individual may submit their case to the Supreme Court. The life of Christopher Simmons was drastically altered by this very process. Simmons was convicted of murder at the age of 17 and sentenced to death in 1993. However, following a series of appeals and disagreements at lower state and federal courts, Simmons' case eventually reached the Supreme Court. And in 2005, in the case of Roper versus Simmons, the court ruled that executing prisoners for crimes committed under the age of 18 constitutes cruel and unusual punishment in violation of our Eighth Amendment rights. What Christopher Simmons did was undoubtedly wrong and criminal, but the Supreme Court had to uphold the law and the Constitution. And through this process, they not only struck down the death sentence of Christopher Simmons, but 72 other minors, showcasing that today, the Supreme Court and our entire judicial process holds a great impact on American citizens. I eventually located John Marshall on my trip to Washington, D.C. The bronze statue of the Chief Justice sits in the hallway of the Supreme Court building, and its inscription reads as follows: "As soldier, he fought that this nation might come into being, and as expounder of the Constitution, he gave it length of days." The Supreme Court has upheld our separation of powers, voiced the concerns of the American people, and valiantly preserved our Constitution. The Supreme Court has faithfully carried the twin principles of liberty and justice for each and every American citizen, and intends to do so for generations into the future.